Hey everyone, this is Elenbaas from Nightlight Astrology. Today we're going to talk about Jupiter in Aries again, and we're going to answer a specific question that I've been getting a whole bunch through social media. Some of my students have been asking me about this. The gist of the question is, hey, what's the deal? Jupiter's entered Aries. I thought it would be like rocket fuel. We talked about Jupiter in Aries as this really dynamic, benefic planet entering the cardinal fire sign, the first sign of the zodiac, a sign associated with spring and youth and birth. Like, where's the where's the blast off, right? I was expecting it. It hasn't come yet. Why hasn't it come? When will it? So we're going to try to address that question today from a variety of different angles. I'm going to also talk a little bit about the three decans of Aries and how a planet transiting through a sign, especially a slower moving one, will tell a story according to which subsection of the sign it is in, the first 10 degrees, the second 10 degrees, or the third 10 degrees, so that we can also begin to understand Jupiter and Aries as a process. It's easy when making videos about Jupiter and Aries to kind of hype it up, right? But the truth is that, when it first enters, sometimes you get a really big splash. Often, though, it's the overall process and looking back on it after the fact, that will yield the most results. Like you'll really see Jupiter, the impact that Jupiter and Aries had, for example, by the time Jupiter enters Taurus. Unfortunately, it's hard sometimes when you're in the midst of a transit to really recognize or notice it. Anyway, I'm going to give you some tips for noticing how to notice Jupiter in Aries, as well as the kind of developmental arc that Jupiter in Aries might have according to the three decans it travels through, and also the time when I think Jupiter in Aries will really pop, which has not yet happened. So that's what we're going to talk about today. In the meantime, as always, don't forget to like and subscribe. When you share comments and share your thoughts and reflections, it really helps everything grow. I also really love it if you have a story rooted in one of the transits we're talking about, that you use the hashtag grabbed and then tell us your story, or email us grabbed@nightlightastrology.com and tell us your story, because I aggregate those and occasionally do storytelling episodes that are just priceless. So if you have one of those, feel free to share using that hashtag or the email address. Don't forget also, we have now just like 2 more days left. We have Friday and we have Saturday, New Year's Eve, to try and hit our goal, which is to reach 1,608 backers in our annual Kickstarter by New Year's Eve midnight, so technically New Year's Day. When you donate, obviously you can choose a reward, and those include all sorts of lectures and special talks that I do on the astrology of 2023, or your horoscope reading for 2023. This can also include huge discounts on all of my online courses, 50% off. If you bundle 4 together, you get 75% off. We still have some of those packages left. So you can find the link to the Kickstarter in the description of this video and the comment section below. We've had a really big push the past couple of days. We are now, as of the time I'm recording this, we are, probably like 400-ish left to go, 450, something like that. We can do that. That's doable. In the past 3 days, in the last 3 days of the Kickstarter, typically we get everyone kind of like, oh yeah, I've been meaning to donate, and at the last minute I will. So let's see if we can get there, guys. If we get there, we are going to be creating an amazing service for you, for the community, which is the development of an affordable reading service that will allow people to get readings from some of my best and brightest graduates. There are thousands of people that come through my programs, and I will be developing a staff of really talented individuals who need experience, who need to start earning money as astrologers. And also, this will provide a service for people that will be affordable. So for example, when I started off as an astrologer my first year, I did about 500 readings, but I did them all by donation, just so that I could get experience before I set like a standardized rate. And then over time, like most astrologers, as you get more experience, your rates may raise incrementally as you go along. But the hard part for many astrologers who are talented, who go through in-depth training programs like the 1-year program, the 2-year program. I have 6 years worth of programs that I teach. If you go through those programs, you're still like, where do I get experience? It's not like you can go and, just most of the people have to build their clientele on their own. So the idea here is to provide an opportunity for students to get experience, to start earning money, and to get that kind of, it's like opening an energetic valve to start having the experience of being an astrologer. It's very, very important. So this is a service to students. This is also going to be a service to people who otherwise couldn't afford a reading, or the wait time is a year long, or it's just out of your price range to get a reading from a professional astrologer that you like. Like my wait time is a year and my rates are fixed based on, my level of experience. So the point of this service is to make a reading service that is really high quality and affordable for people, because most of the time really good astrological readings are going to be a long wait and they're going to be pricing some people out. I think that ought to change. So that's why we're trying to reach this goal. If you donate, that's the big thing that you're helping us with at this point. The remaining goal that we have left is to meet that threshold of 1,608 backers and create this service. So again, when you do that, come and study in one of my classes. Come and take one of my classes. You get it 50% off. If you bundle a bunch together, you get up to 75% off. My Roots and Spheres class, the moon circle that pairs the study of astrology every moon cycle along with dieting different herbal plants, and my wife and I guiding that session, that starts in January. That's on sale through the Kickstarter. The Readings and Passages program, which is for people who have already started studying Hellenistic astrology but need live client work and chart practice. That class starts in January as well. My year 1 program, my year 2 program, my horary program, they all start in June and November of this year. You can join any of those. You can use the coupons whenever you want. They never expire. You can transfer them or gift them, so they're really flexible. All right. Thank you for letting me talk about the Kickstarter, really trying to bang the drum hard here as we come down the home stretch. Let's see if we can get there. And thank you so much to everyone who's already donated. I love doing this work. This is like, I live and breathe this work every single day of my life. And it's an honor to do it for you guys. It's a real privilege to have such a great audience. All right. Well, at any rate, so let's get into it. The main complaint summarized is what gives? Jupiter in Aries is not delivering the goods. When is Jupiter in Aries going to deliver me some Jupiter in Aries heat? Now I'm ready for it. Why not? And I've heard this like enough that I was like, that's interesting. I haven't experienced that. Like it's been very noticeable for me, and I'm not quite ready to tell all of my personal Jupiter in Aries moments so far, but I feel like it's been very noticeable in my life right now. But I have heard it enough from other people that I recognize that not everyone is experiencing it or is kind of like underwhelmed. Like, what the heck? I thought Jupiter in Aries was going to be this big thing. So let's just look and see. I want you to notice something. One is that Jupiter was already in Aries, and Jupiter was in Aries in this 2022 earlier in the year. And so we've already spent like a good deal of time on the degrees that Jupiter is currently in right now. And that may have something to do with it. All right, let's look back at Jupiter in Aries and its entrance into Aries last spring. So this is Jupiter's entrance into Aries happens, here it is, getting it there. So this is May 10th of 2022. All right, so, and then I just want you to notice, like, I'm just going to advance this along. So May 10th, 2022, Jupiter enters Aries. It's forward motion through the zodiac. You can see it there at the bottom of the wheel. It looks like a little number 4. Actually, I'll circle it so that you can see it. So it's right there. So it gets to about 8 degrees and it turns retrograde over the summer. And then it passes backward and eventually goes into late Pisces again at the end of October. Okay, so the first 10 degrees of Jupiter in Aries, we have gotten to know quite thoroughly already. And right now, if you look at what's going on, Jupiter is, here we go. Jupiter is just at that 0 degree marker right now. Right? And it doesn't actually cross outside of that 8 degree mark. Let's just push this forward here. Not until about February 15th does it get into the 9th degree, where it is essentially in new territory. Now, I'm not suggesting that means you shouldn't be feeling anything whatsoever from Jupiter. But the reason that this is important is that Jupiter, any slow-moving planet, when it's moving through a sign, even faster-moving planets, but it's easier to track or notice with slower ones, is going to tell us a story. And that story comes for ancient astrologers was often tracked according to the development of the planet through the 3 decans: the first decan, the second decan, and the third decan. The decan is the division of all the signs of the zodiac into 3 parts of 10 degrees each. Of course, there's 30 degrees per sign, so you've got 10 degree subsections, 3 of them per sign. Now, each one had a variety of alchemical and magical images associated with them. Over time, they have been associated with different tarot cards, different planetary combinations, different teachings and kind of mythic images. And so I'm not suggesting that I have the skeleton key and I perfectly understand the decans. There are people, who spend a lot more time on them than I do, certainly. One of the reasons I thought about doing this today is because I'm also going on Spencer. If you guys know Spencer from Spencer Michaud from the Astrology of Sports podcast, I'm going on his Instagram live feed or whatever it is, or maybe it's his YouTube channel. I can't remember. And I am doing a talk on the new moon, or the new moon in Capricorn. And so we're looking at the moon cycle, basically, that we're in right now. And he's big into the decans. And so I was thinking, as I was trying to figure out how to talk about Jupiter in Aries and why maybe we haven't seen it pop yet, I thought, well, one thing that's very true is that the decans tell a story. And right now, we've kind of really already gotten to know that first decan of Aries and its story for a while. So I think that we're going to see a shift when Jupiter leaves that first decan. I think we're going to see a noticeable shift with Jupiter in Aries, maybe to the extent that if you feel like in this past December around the solstice when Jupiter entered Aries that nothing sort of major happened, it could be because we're essentially revisiting degrees that have already been visited twice, once through direct motion, once through retrograde, and now again through direct motion, all in the same decan. So in order to understand the first 10 degrees of Aries and what we've been dealing with, I want to read you something that comes from the only book on the decans that I've found that really clicks for me, which is called 36 Faces, The History, Astrology, and Magic of the Decans by one of my colleagues, Austin Kopik, who is a regular on the Astrology podcast with Chris Brennan. Austin has come and given talks for my students on multiple occasions. And one time he came and gave a talk on the decans, which came from this book. And I really thought it was a wonderful talk. So I ended up picking up a copy of the book, and it's a resource that I occasionally use. Though I'm not a decan aficionado by any stretch. So anyway, here is Aries 1, the first 10 degrees. And this is what Austin writes about it. When the Arabic sages started into the first decan of the zodiac and beckoned what was veiled to come forward, they saw a dark man with crimson eyes, his hands clutching a battle axe and his manner furious. This figure was said to grant victory in war, domination over one's enemies. A half millennium before that, this decan was identified with the axe-wielding spirits Chonter and Alathemus. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that correctly. 500 years later, in his 3 books of occult philosophy, Agrippa describes the figure in nearly identical terms. A similarly vermilion figure stares out over a castle wall in the 2 of Wands in the Rider-Waite Tarot, its image informed by the late 19th century syncretization of the card with this decan. The axe pictured in so many of the images is a weapon of obvious martial purpose, yet the axe menace conceals its role as a symbol and magical tool. The gory martial history of the axe need not be explained, but its function may need to be understood with more subtlety. The axe is the primordial splitter, the first and still best tool for creating 2 out of 1. Life on all levels requires this division for growth. The cell undergoes mitosis, splitting itself. All cosmologies begin with this sundering of the one. The splitting of the one is a severance from the symbolic mother, the womb from which all things emerge. In this decan, what is motherly and unifying constricts development rather than furthering it. The child is only truly born as a separate individual when the umbilical cord has been severed. The axe is also a crucial tool in taming the environment. Trees become lumber beneath its blade. The dynamic but unsympathetic profusion of nature is brought under the pattern of individual will. A man makes a cabin for himself in the wilderness. The axe is thus a tool of the first individual, bravely severing himself from the primordial mother and building a distinct and individual life. This assertion of selfhood is undiluted yang and in principle phallic, no matter the gender of who embodies it. The phallus in play here is a symbol of potency. No matter no matter the gender of who embodies it, the phallus in play here is a symbol of potency. Yet its reality involves tremendous vulnerability, the same vulnerability that the lone individual faces in a sometimes hostile world. The axe may be the tool by which the individual liberates themselves from the collective, but it is also the cruel weapon of the primordial mother as castrator, the limiting force with which the warlike figures of this Decan wrestle. This is the essence of this face, the individual yang struggling out of the collective yin. Historically, many of the images associated with this Decan have pictured a dark man. Being the first Decan of the zodiac and the reckoning of many systems, the individual personality has not had time to develop. There is only being and doing. Thus is the figure dark, for the spirit has not yet coalesced into a socialized personality, and the actions are as yet unfiltered. There is a raw will here, savage yet naive, the tyrannical spirit of the infant. Yet it is important to note that the untamed nature of these drives is not intentionally cruel. It is merely the will pressing reality to conform with its pattern. Though fierce, the figures seen in this face are not always successful, as theirs is an unsubtle force, and some trials require the wits of tricksters rather than the sword arms of warriors. By engaging in contests of will, those who travel this Decan may have to submit to those who best them in this game. Indeed, it is often the first lesson of the dominant personality to experience the other side of the duad they constantly recreate. There is a tendency in this Decan to try to do too much with force alone, not comprehending the subtle cycles of the world. Karmic debts accumulate quickly, calling to the destroying mother to come, axe in hand. The raw assertion of individual being here has several magical uses. It may be tapped in order to sever contacts and break bonds which no longer serve. One might also direct this force to a portion of their environment which is out of control. There is a power to bring subjective order to the world here, to chop down trees, to cut a path through the jungle. As demonstrated by some of the traditional lore in this Decan, the raw power which burns here can also be turned on an enemy to dire effect. In the reds and blacks of this face lie the root of personal power, the untamed and unrestrained will. Though necessary for all great works, its nature is contrary to civilized world. Those born into this face and those who tap its power should both be wary of swatting flies with battle axes. It's a good last line. So what I want to emphasize is that's so important about this, and which I agree with fundamentally, is that when a planet is going through a sign, the first portion of the sign is very different from the second portion or from the third portion. Whether you're looking at it from the standpoint of the journey that it takes through the bounds, which are another subsection of degrees within the sign, or the fact that things start well in signs and tend toward entropy and more destructive qualities at the very ends of signs. Whatever the case might be, if you're not feeling like, oh, wow, I thought Jupiter in Aries was really going to pack a punch as it came back around this December, remember that it's already been through these degrees twice. So that's a huge thing that plays a very significant role in the way that you feel or notice or observe a planet, even if it's aspecting other planets in your chart, because it's already done so twice. So that's the first thing. The second thing is that Jupiter, what I like about what he's saying here in the first Decan is it gives you a way to think about it, right? So the first Decan of Aries has a lot to do with individuating. One way that you could easily understand this transit from last April, or was it last May? Sorry, May 10th through the end of October, is in what ways did I grow? In what ways did I have to assert myself? In what ways did I have to sever, split, cut off, and individuate? In a very primal, basic way. Now, there's one story I will tell you, which you already all know. There's others I'll keep to myself until I know I'm still in it. You know what I mean? So, but one of them was as Jupiter entered Aries and made some aspects in my chart, one of the individuating, cutting of cords acts that needed to happen for me was the departure from a religious community that I was a part of, which is a very Jupiter in Aries in the first Decan kind of thing, if that makes sense. So look at your life and think to yourself, I'm in the process of a first Decan in Aries process of individuation, of severing, of cutting, of further defining myself. And this is a process that really is going to conclude in the next few months. So when does that conclude? Again, about the end of February. I have it at about February 19th or 20th that Jupiter leaves that first decan and goes into the second decan. Now, the second decan, in my opinion, is not, it's dynamic. Let's just take a look. So you have not a lot of aspects going on from Jupiter to other planets the whole time. The one aspect is a conjunction from Venus in the early part of the second decan around the beginning of March. And then Venus separates and Jupiter is going on its merry way. You have a new moon in Aries behind Jupiter around right around the spring equinox, or the Aries zero Aries point later in March. But you don't have anything like what's about to happen here. So Mercury crosses Aries in the second decan. So you've got Venus, a new moon prior to Jupiter, but these are still not like major aspects. But then things heat up when we get into the third decan. Once you get into the third decan, that's when things become really explosive. It's at that time that we get a synodic conjunction between Jupiter and the Sun. So you have a conjunction between Jupiter and the Sun around April 11th. Then things get really spicy, because that's kind of a rebirth moment for Jupiter in Aries. And Jupiter in Aries is now in sort of the final home stretch, last decan of the sign. And I'm going to read you what the second and third decans are about as well. But after that, then things get really super interesting, because then we have right after that, then we get into eclipse season. Okay. And then as eclipse season is going on, remember that Jupiter is slowly moving through Aries, and then it gets into that 29th degree of Aries. And I want you to see what's happening as it culminates at the very end of the sign of Aries. Notice Mars in its fall, the ruler of Jupiter in Aries, coming into a square. As Jupiter's preparing to change signs, it will square Pluto, and then Mars will enter Leo and create a T-square with the three planets. So interestingly, if I had to make a case for when you might feel Jupiter in Aries at sort of its loudest and most powerful, again, first, remember it's a process. Consider that this first decan, so to speak, and these degrees that we're going through are not brand new. And so that might be a little bit about why, I'm getting so many DMs from people and emails being like, well, what gives? Why don't I feel Jupiter in Aries a little bit more? Well, because it's a process, and some of the most dynamic parts of the process seem to come during decans 2 and 3, at least in terms of the remaining transit of Jupiter in Aries. There were some dynamic moments last summer as well in the first decan, but in terms of what you have left to deal with, decan 2 and 3, especially decan 3, are where the party is at. Excuse me. So, so if I had to stretch it out here, what I would say is that from, say, late February through mid-May, that is the most explosive time of Jupiter's transit through Aries that we have yet to experience. Probably more dynamic than what we have seen recently, although I think a lot of people really felt the Sun square to Jupiter at the winter solstice, although it was very brief. So that's what I want to say about that. Now what I want to do is I want to show you how things are likely to progress from an archetypal standpoint in Aries decan 2, or sometimes the decans are also called faces or decans. So Aries 2, the crown. This is a royal face, for it is here that the sun's traditional degree of exaltation is found. Here the individual struggles with their potential, what is truly royal inside them. The focal point of this decan is the world which emanates from an individual. This reality field results from the qualities which they chose to embody. The tarot card syncretized with this decan in the Golden Dawn system is the Three of Wands, whose title, Virtue, offers a clue as to its meaning. All virtues and vices are habits. Neither are not generated in a day or left behind in a moment. They come to define not only character, but the interaction of the character with the world around it. Given time, one's virtues and vices come to define their lives. Indeed, the world remembers one for little else but these two. The practice of virtue and vice therefore define a character. Luminous potential hardens in the scaffolding of practice like gold cast, stretched and worked. Thus the potential becomes the royal regalia, the crown jewel of one's personal world. Though the history of morality is overrun with lists of virtues and vices, their mixture and proportion within a given person is always unique. And from these endless admixtures arise a billion worlds. The figures of this face are always royal, for all emanate a world of their own making, though they may not understand the process by which they generate it. Through contemplation of this face, we see the deep sovereignty all have over the nature of their world. Though this face reveals profound truths about the process by which a personal world is generated, it does not speak to a particular type, for all realms proceed from the sovereign self, which radiates a complete mandala of heavens, hells, and human realms. Though it is the self which generates these worlds, one does not abide in them alone. The world field generated draws those of like vibration, characters able to live out the stories written on the stage provided. Those who intentionally generate their own world always find it stocked with refugees and settlers. Thus, those seen in this face are leaders, for they are followed. Their actions and decisions are imitated, their vices and virtues copied. Liber Hermetis names the ruler of this decan Sabaoth, one of the Hebrew god names used commonly in Kabbalah. Hope I said that correctly. It is generally translated as Lord of Hosts. The attribution of this god name to this decan attests the burden of leadership, which often falls upon the shoulders of the creator. Those who would create a world are responsible for the direction those who reside within it. Those who would create a world are responsible for the direction those who reside within it. Applied magically, this decan has tremendous power. It is the power to generate the world of your choosing and to be its sovereign. It is a key to creating pocket realities which do not obey the laws of the collective reality field in which they exist. It's interesting that in decan 1, we go from a kind of rudimentary, raw cutting, splitting, severing in order to be our own person, but that person is not yet sort of fully developed. In decan 2, what I like about Austin's explanation is that it goes on to say, from that individuating comes the creation of a world and the responsibility for it, as well as the connection of what you create to the habits that you hold and your vices and virtues. That's remarkable. It sort of feels like decan 2, which again, if we had to, let's give you an exact timeline for decan 2. So I'm going to go back here. Decan 2 is going to be about February 20th. February 20th to April 4th. So I just want you to imagine that, take those dates, February 20th, April 4th, and imagine now that we're moving into a phase where, remember, Jupiter only there's that new moon in Aries that comes in right around March 20th, 21st. Here we go. Let me go back. Yeah, so it's the new moon in Aries is right about March 21st, on just after the spring equinox. Mercury is going to conjoin Jupiter in the second decan. I think Venus does early in March as well. Let me just remember that. Yeah, it's early March. Venus conjoins Jupiter. So it's not like there's a ton of development while Jupiter's in that second decan, but you could think about late February through March as a time in which the continuation of those Jupiter and Aries themes, individuating, start to shift into vices, virtues, habits, and building a world, sort of extending the individuation process into more of a world you inhabit that is also in some ways its unique own thing as apart from the rest of reality, sort of extending or expanding the process of individuation. But then it's decan 3 where everything really takes off. And I thought this next part you guys are really going to like. So check out what Austin has to say about part 3. And this decan runs from like around April 3rd or 4th all the way into May, when Jupiter enters Taurus. So that's going to be, it enters Taurus, about May 16th. Okay, so you've got May 16th. what did I say the first one was? April 4th to May 16th. So now this last part is very, very explosive. And part of that is because Jupiter will be combust, but then Cazimi at the 21st degree on April 11th. And then from that point on, you're getting the Jupiter, Pluto, Mars dynamic building, which then pops in about the middle of May as Jupiter's coming down the home stretch of the final decan. So to me, that is the part like April, May, when I think most people are going to go, oh shit, we've been dealing with Jupiter in Aries for like a year now, and it's been this whole process, and now I'm really seeing it. Because that's often what happens with slow moving planets. You don't fully understand what they've been doing, what they've been teaching, because you're in it. And then they hit that last part, and you're sort of reaping what's been sown. Oftentimes you'll notice when a planet first enters, or when it aspects planets in your chart, or hits an important degree. But otherwise, it's as though it's a process that's playing out. And that's why I think sometimes following the decans can be a nice way of reminding yourself, yes, there's a developmental process. We haven't hit part 2 of this process yet. It's all coming at the tail end. We've spent a lot of it in part 1, a very rudimentary form of individuating. Well, now it's going to expand, right? And then we hit decan 3, which is like the grand finale. So here it is. Aries 3, the burning rose. In this phase, we see the power of art to overcome hostility. This is the power of the dancer, the stand-up comedian, and the lecturer to charm a hostile audience. While the first decan of Aries involves a focus on victory in competitive or hostile relationships, and the second, the establishment of conscious sovereignty over personal reality. The third decan's scope extends outward in a more social direction. The spirit, which established independence in the first decan and rulership in the second, here shines before many, setting fire to the hearts of all who bear witness. This is the power of the spirit to unify and seduce, to motivate and to bond those of confluent passions. The action of this decan, which is according to one system Venusian, another Jupiterian, is classically benefic, yet it requires the martial heat of the battlefield. A number of visions dance across this face. The performer stands before a hostile crowd. The sergeant crouches with his troops in a bunker while artillery rains down. A hippie places a rose into the barrel of a loaded gun. In all cases, it is the potential conflict which galvanizes this face's power to unify. There is a remarkable potency here to create a commonality of spirit even in the most hostile conditions. Yet the bonds that form here often require that intensity to endure. The bond shared by military men, the celebrated esprit de corps, decays outside of war's pressures. The audience members soon forget the performers who so moved them. In love's battlefield, once the friction and fire of the first conjunctio with its terror and elation have subsided, the lamp of raw passion burns low. A less volatile fuel is required for the flame to continue on. In the 36 Heirs of the Zodiac, a fragmentary Hellenistic text, this face is given to Eros, ancestor of Cupid and deity of erotic desire. While some texts ascribe primordial origins to Eros, his attribution to this face more likely refers to his role as Aphrodite's troubling son. Arrows pierced the hearts of God and human alike, setting each aflame with desire. These love stories, like many seen in this face, did not all end in harmonious union. Instead, from many arose disastrous dramas of passion overindulged. Eros's escapades make clear that the desire for unification is inflamed by separation, love by war, lust by forbiddance. With the flames of war, so surges the heart. The difficulty for those who walk the territory these images enclose is to understand when the passion which fuels a relationship is created wholly by the intensity of circumstance. Peeking through the window of this face, we can see the lovers trapped in the second circle of Dante's Inferno, their union unable to exist outside the chaotic and destructive winds of their own passion. Yet this face offers no curse. One must simply understand the limitations of its power. There are peak experiences here, inspiring unions amidst life's great struggles. Yet the one who walks these scenes must understand that these experiences do not promise anything of the future, and that fact is just part and parcel of their glory. The rose shines most brightly when it is on fire. It is thus the burning rose which exemplifies this decan's power. Embodied, it grants the charisma to motivate and attract. When its light is called toward a particular situation, bonds are forged and spirits raised. Beautiful, beautiful description. And one of the things that I think is super interesting about this is that there's the idea here of it's almost like you can see the development of like you're going in decan 1, there's this feeling of severing, splitting, individuating in a very basic, almost like baby step kind of way. It's a big step, but it's just the beginning. In the second, there's this feeling of expanding the world, that to create a world, and for it to be rooted in your habits, your vices, and your virtues. In the third, it's as if there's a conflagration. There's something transcendent, something being released, something that needs to burn, and you get to a point where passion is so intense, will and the ego and the individual realm of desire becomes so intense that it can burn you. But it's through that burn that you learn some of the most important lessons. And I suspect it is just that burn, that transcendent, all consuming burn. And whether that is rooted in our vices, our virtues, our ego, or the most generous spirit we have, being consumed by something, being lifted by some kind of transcendent flame, is what we have in store for that April-May period. And that's probably the period where people will go, oh, wow, there's been a whole story for the past year with Jupiter and Aries. So I think people ought to be patient for that reason. Like, listen to this. Let's just reread one little thing he says. That the heirs, the 36 heirs of the zodiac, a fragmentary Hellenistic text, this face is given to Eros, ancestor of Cupid and deity of erotic desire. Erotic desire doesn't mean just sex. It could be that. Like, certainly the idea of becoming powerful and individuating can come with the appeal of power, and the force of individual will often comes desire. And so the natural conclusion of this is like, what's too much, or what's too hot, or what's overwhelming, or where have I become completely intoxicated, or maybe where have I transcended and lifted into something sort of holy and ecstatic beyond even my own personal will, something spiritual. But the idea here that I want you to think about is of a flame rising up, and the image of the blazing rose at the last decan between March and April, as the sun is burning up Jupiter, and then they have this synodic conjunction. And then you get this, as Jupiter finishes at that critical degree, immediately goes into a square with Pluto and Mars. And that's in the middle of May. So to me, I think that the lessons of Jupiter and Aries, and the way that Jupiter and Aries wants to teach and grow us, so to speak, especially through that lens of fire, cardinal fire, you're going to notice it more intensely in, say late February through May, than you probably have already, because the first 10 degrees is a little bit more basic in a sense. So anyway, I hope that answers the question, gives you some really fun things to look forward to and kind of wonder about. And I'd love to hear your comments or reflections on anything you've already experienced with Jupiter into Aries. I'd be fascinated to hear. Use the hashtag grabbed, or share a story with us by emailing us, grabbed@nightlightastrology.com. Don't forget, we are trying to get to 1,608 backers. Can we get there? I think we can. I really do. I believe that we're not that far away. Let me just recheck here. Yeah, we've even had 5 or 6 donations since I started making this. So I know we can do it. We just need people who say, I love this channel. I watch it regularly, once or twice a week. Maybe you're a 5-day-a-week person. Maybe you're 2-3 times a month. But if it gives you something positive, if it helps you, if it grows you as an astrologer, please consider pitching in and supporting us. We really appreciate it. And thanks to everyone who's already donated. All right, that's what I've got for today. I hope you guys are having a good one. We'll see you again tomorrow. Bye.